Good evening, gentlemen. Good to have you all on board after yet another uneventful 3 weeks in the life of Rangers Football Club. So, looking back at those 3 weeks, we've had a bit of a journey in the league. We've had Alloa at Ibrox, which provided a few scares. We've had a Tonkin, certainly away from home by Bruges. It's only been slightly enlivened by Celtic and Kaira Almaty and their fans' implosion, which is nothing to do with us, but obviously does lift the gloom a little bit, because they go so demented. So the number of signings that we've made should hopefully have an impact on the side. I'm just going to go through the kind of coverage we've got. So left wing, Gassama, Moore, and Matondo, if he's still alive. Up front, Chermiti, Majovski, Danilo. On the right, Ant-Man, Curtis, Dow. In the midfield, Asgard, Cameron are new. Rothwell's fairly new. Raskin, Barron, Rice, Diomande, Bajrami. At the back, Agoma, Cornelius has come in. Suter, Nasalias, however you pronounce that, still in the books. De Giga, Fernandez, King, Tavernier, Aarons, Sterling, and Hutton. My view would be, on paper, that's not a bad team, but considering I don't know how you would quite describe them, the somewhat comedic team selections and tactics that the manager's employed, will it be a good team? I can see you're smiling, Alistair, so do you want to have a bash at that?
I don't think there's any doubt that we've got depth in the squad now. I don't think that can be questioned. Arguably, in every position apart from left back, where we're obviously reliant now on a 19-year-old loanee to stay fit for the entire season, or alternatively revert to what we did, which is Max Aarons playing there, or James Tavernier playing there, or as Kevin Thilwell alluded to earlier, potentially Mo Diamande playing there. So we've got options in every position. My concern is centre forward still. I know we've shelled out the money in geometry, but he doesn't really have a particularly proven record. I know he's raw. I know there's potential there, but I think that word is the key word for a recruitment over the summer. It's potential. The vast majority of players that were brought in have got potential. There's no that proven track record, and if we are now turning into a development club, then I think we've got to get players that have got a wee bit more than just potential, so that they can hit the ground running and obviously give us that platform to get the wins that the manager or head coach, so desperately needs.
Lee, what's your view on the signings, both in the summer and in the transfer window?
Yeah, so I would agree a bit with what Alistair said there. I tend to have been quite positive about the signings, Mark. I'm not going to pretend that I know a huge amount about any of the guys that have came in, but the ones that have brought in, it's the sort of kind of potential where you've thought, yep, I can see where that would work. I mean, Kevin Thirlwell spoke today about targeting certain areas where he wanted to strengthen. He talked about the forward areas, the wide areas, and we've certainly done that. We've certainly brought guys in. I think bringing guys like Mikey Moore to the club, for example, I think that's quite exciting. He's only 17, but he's a massive prospect down south. He's performed very, very well at international level, albeit at still youth level. So I think bringing guys like that in on paper, it has looked really good. I've really liked, like Lyle Cameron, for example. I think he's really impressed since he's come in. Alistair was talking there about the left back position, so I get Thelwell spoke today about our newest signing. I think it's Cornelius, that he can fill in at left back. He's played there before, so on paper they are certainly thinking about it, and it does look like they're trying to add that depth. They're trying to cover those eventualities. And I know you're going to come into this and anyway, but I genuinely do think it's really, really difficult to judge a lot of them so far, just on the way that we've been set up, how open we've been. So if we're purely asking about the signings, yes, I'm on board with quite a few of them. I think we needed to gut the squad. They definitely look like they've started to do that. Are we going to be successful in terms of a team? of all these guys playing together, the jury is very much still out. There was certainly excuses made about, we've still got guys from last year who still aren't kicking their own backsides. But last few games, we're absolutely now starting with eight players, sometimes nine new faces if you're going to include Danilo, because although he's not a new player, he's certainly a new face to the team. So I don't think that excuse kind of washes anymore. So yeah, certainly signings, yes, I'm pretty okay on the whole with it. But will we be a team? I don't know.
David, your overview, please, pal.
I think in terms of numbers and depth, I don't think there's any doubt that it looks better than it was last year. And I think one of the things to say straight away is that at the end of last season, I didn't know anyone that didn't want the squad to be absolutely gutted. Absolutely everyone wanted lots of new faces, and we have been given our wish. I do think, as well as at left back, I think we've got a shortage of proven goal scorers. Miovski's the only one I think you can say he looks as if he's somebody in his back from his history who's been a regular goal scorer. I think the lack leaders. I know we brought this Cornelius in, and Kevin Thelwell mentioned leadership as one of his qualities today. But I do worry a little bit about the mentality of so many young players in the team. Potential's great, but I think the players, experienced players to learn from, and I'm just not sure we've got a lot of leaders in the squad. And defence does still worry me a bit in terms of things like experience. So, although Giga, for example, has played Champions League level, if you look at the number of first team games he's actually played, it's not as many as you think it would be. Fernandez looks like a development player. And then the fullback positions, Aarons hasn't played a lot of football. McHoma hasn't played a lot of football. I'll be happy to see Dujon Sterling back, actually, because I think he can cover both fullback positions, which is something that nobody else can really do.
Who would be your pick of the new signings? I take it Gassama kind of leaps out for you.
Gassama is the one that hit the ground running best. I've been very impressed with Lyle Cameron, who's kind of come under the radar, actually. I think he looks like a player who will excel domestically. He looks as if he's a player that finds space. He's got a pass, he's got a trick, but he gets into the box and supports the forwards. I think he looks like a number 10, and I don't want to go too much about the game on Saturday yet, and Sunday, I mean, but we finally played with a kind of number 10 system, the one that Philip Clement tried to play without one. And I think Cameron and Asgard look as if they're two natural number 10s. So I think that's an area that we might be better off than we were last season.
Although I think it's been slightly lost in the number of signings that we've had, it's certainly a big issue. I was quite lucky the other night to just log on, and in my Twitter feed up popped a thing from an Everton fan who's got I think 65,000 followers. So he had the details of the Chermiti transfer. And then immediately people went away and went, my God, how many games has this guy played? Where has he played? And overwhelmingly within an hour, there was like 5 pages, and it was overwhelmingly, you've got to be joking, or this is the end. And that somewhat abated. Knowing your interest in history, 25 years ago last Saturday, that we signed Ronald de Boer for 4.5 million, established internationalist, played for Ajax, played for Barcelona. And being a bit of an oddity, I looked at the numbers that were getting fired up about Chermiti that have been reported, saying it could be 8.5 million now, rising to 10 million. And if you take the 4.5 million that Ronald de Boer had spent on him and put it into the Bank of England's inflation calculator, that comes out as 8.6 million. Well, whatever he is, he doesn't quite have Ronald de Boer's CV. Now, obviously, things have changed in England, and in terms of the prices down there have gone nuts. Chermiti, it's a lot of money to hang your hat on for a boy with was it 7 goals and 75 appearances, or whatever stat you care to dig out. Have you done much digging in that, Davey? Have you had much time to consider him.
Well, certainly the price tag surprised me. It's got to be said. When I found out that we were after that player, my immediate thought was that's another loan deal, because I didn't think we would be in the market for a striker from the English Premiership and be able to pay for one, because that's a market that forwards cost an absolute fortune. I mean, he went to Everton for Portuguese football, didn't he? And I think he cost the best part 15 million euros to 12, 13 million quid at 18, 19 years old. So he obviously had something then, obviously. He's had injuries, he's struggled with this, let's be honest, he struggled with the standard of the EPL, but that's a standard that's miles beyond what we are. I've got conflicting thoughts on it. One is that if he genuinely was a 15 million euro striker a couple of years ago, if we can bring that to the fore again, if we can bring that out in him, he should be able to rip the SPL up. He absolutely should be able to. The counter argument for that in me is that for a club who are desperate to win week after week and lift trophies, a regular goal scorer is an absolute must. And if we had 8 million quid that we had earmarked for a striker, I think if it had been me, I would have went to a market where I would have got something proven with a lot less risk associated with it.
There is also, if I move on to Lee, just to give everybody their say, there is a thing in my head which I think it was two AGMs ago. Fella got up from the body of the cup, kind of rattled through, some of the figures that would supposedly paid for people and money that would supposedly got in. And he said, these don't tie up with what's in the accounts. And the chief financial officer, Scott Wilson, said, well, that's what you read in the papers, but that's not the actuality of what happened in each of those deals. And he went on to explain which one. So Chermiti, I'm not sure that the club would allow, 8.5 million, 10 million to be reported. If that was wildly over the top, they'd have no reason to, Then again, do they want to give away the secrets of that deal? So I'm just wondering, Lee, could this be a case where, we find out in next year's accounts what it actually cost? Or could it be that
possibly, because it's...
Could it be that Kevin Thelwell, being at Everton, has identified this guy as being a really good prospect, but probably not of EPL quality, but could tear it up in Scotland?
Yeah, well, first of all, I certainly hope so. And that's the first thing. I won't try and pretend I know nothing about this guy. I don't think I've ever seen him playing. That's the thing with the transfer fees, isn't it? Because you always get the old, in a deal worth 8.5 million or a deal worth 10 million. And it's kind of widely known now that wages and things like that will be added in, and it will be multiplied over the number of years contract, and the fee can be somewhat less than that. I certainly agree with Davey. It was a really, really surprising one. Didn't really seem to fit with any sort of model. We're starting to see a kind of model emerging a little bit. The sort of the model that we've been crying out for as a football club for a long time. And it is that buying potential and, selling on for a bit of a profit. And, when you see like the business, for example, that we've done with Eagleman and things like that, it does look like we are finally going to start going down that route. In terms of this lad on his own, I agree with you. I think it's an incredible pressure to put on his shoulders. You only need to look at how quickly the support turned on Danilo. At first, it was like, oh look, we're signing a Brazilian forward for 6 million quid, so he must be good. And immediately he was labelled as being excellent before he kicked the ball. It's not worked out for him. I don't think anybody can argue different. So I would certainly extend some caution now that we're just going to completely write this lad off because he's cost too much money this time, and we're saying, well, didn't work with other, we've been burnt with this before, that it's definitely not going to work. But I would say that whatever Thelwell has seen in him, I agree with David. I think it's an incredible risk, spending that kind of money on a completely unproven goal scorer, which is what we do badly need, because we've literally just seen two of them walk out the door. Say what you like about Egeman and Dessers, but they knew where the goal was. Egeman was a very, very good forward player, maybe wasn't as prolific as Dessers, and Dessers was Dessers. You know, we've spoken about that in this podcast so many times. But yeah, they both needed to be replaced by a proven goal scorer. Hopefully, Miovski's going to be that. But spending that sort of cash on a a young unproven talent, it's a big thing, because to spend that sort of money at Rangers, they really need to play. Like, we need these guys to be playing, and we need to see the worth of them. Unfortunately, we're not an EPL club that can spend that sort of dough, and it doesn't work out. So,
Alistair, have you your nose stuck in the stats on this one?
Just the 7 and 75 is the one that's come up. I don't think he scored a goal for 2 years, either 21 or 22 appearances in the EPL. But again, even that masks it, because he's not had a lot of minutes either. So I think of the two that we've brought in, I think Miovski, I think he's something like 44 or 45 in 98 for Aberdeen. So he's got a proven record in Scotland. But given the way the manager plays, or sorry, the head coach sets the team up, I would think at the moment it's only going to be one of them that plays. And with the best one in the world, if you're spending circa 8.5 million, 10 million on one player, you would like to think that Dimitri is the number one pick. The issue he's probably going to have is in knowing, whether it be media in this country or football supporters in this country, if he doesn't score early, if he goes 2, 3, 4 games without scoring, then the price tag gets mentioned, that will get thrown in, that this £10 million player, he's a £10 million flop, etc., etc. So if he is going to come in, he really needs to hit the ground running, and the only way he's going to do that is by scoring goals, which for a 21-year-old guy who doesn't have a proven track record of scoring goals is a huge, just to take Lee's word, it's a huge risk on this guy.
Do you think it adds a question mark over the manager? If we look at letting Dessers go, if we look at Iggy going, and the way that he went, with declaring himself unfit for the bench, and the fact that he's fallen out with Raskin, that doesn't really say much for your man management skills. If I go back to Dessers, my view's always been, you can say he's limited, he doesn't hold the ball up, he quite often doesn't play other people in, although there have been times when he's done quite spectacularly. But he knew where the goal was. It was literally, all he does is score goals. And then Iggeman, I think he's well on his way to being a class player. And Raskin, it's got to be a fairly dreadful kind of state of affairs where the guy's refusing, well, effectively refusing or being refused to play.
Yep.
So in terms of what we're talking about, the signings, add in Russell Martin, the evidence that we can all see. We don't know what's going on inside the dressing room, but the evidence of his man management, the team selections, and the tactics. Today, Kevin Thelwell did a fantastic interview, but the danger for Kevin and the rest of us is, I still get the feeling that this is, the next game or the game after, we could quite easily have another disaster in our hands, a 3 or 4-0 against Hearts or Hibs at Ibrox. Which when we were all talking in WhatsApp the other day, I think we were pretty unanimously, we wanted him to go, just thinking, might cost 4 million, but it means we don't have a wasted season.
I think going back, we've got a squad with potential. We've got a squad with a bit of depth in it, but there's still that undercurrent of, with Russell Martin in charge, you just never know. Even at the weekend, where I think people there are Martin sympathisers who are leaning on, it's really important to get the point and whatever, and it was a much better performance, much more solid, etc., etc. Celtic were there for the taking at the weekend, and any manager with a wee bit of nous or a wee bit of tactical know-how about him would have known exactly how to go on Sunday, and taking Celtic, as I say, there for the taking, would have taken 3 points. Russell Martin going into Sunday, I honestly think had we gone on Sunday and won the game 3 or 4-0, it still wouldn't have bought him any more time. It still wouldn't have put any more credit in the bank. As I don't think there are many Rangers supporters, or indeed any Rangers supporters out there, that see him as being a short-term solution, never mind a medium-term solution or a long-term solution. Any credit that he had, and I don't think he had a lot to begin with. The vast majority, as we've spoken on here at times, that nobody really wanted him in the first instance. So he, kind of microcosm of Dimitri, he needed to hit the ground running. He hasn't done. And there's nothing to suggest, Mark, as you say, we've got Hearts and Hibs coming up at home after the international break. I don't think there's many of us confident at the moment that we'll get positive results out of those games, irrespective of what's been done in the transfer window. And that's down to the fact that Russell Martin's still in charge. If we go out against Hearts, we're in a position just now where we're 6 points, 7 points behind or whatever it is. Lose the game to Hearts, all of a sudden, it's no Celtic that we're chasing Hearts as well. And it's unthinkable to have spent that kind of money, circa £27 million, to be chasing not just one team, but two teams. So for me, I tried to back it. I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think if we are to have a successful season, then the only way we're going to do that is to change the manager. Whatever the financial hit is in the short term, I think we have to suck that up and take it and look for someone else.
Lee, it could be a case of that we're reading too much into the Celtic result. I mean, you can say, well, they've come to Ibrox in the back of a 7,000-mile journey to Almaty and back. That their manager and this board are obviously at war. And, how quickly that turned round. You thought that, on the one hand, Rodgers had played a blinder, made himself unsackable. Then Dermot Desmond, calls his bluff, and suddenly he's a dead man walking again. So Celtic have got those excuses. Did you see any real hope in the performance on Sunday, which I think universally most people are saying was a fairly dreadful game?
Yeah, no, I have to say I was pretty dismayed with Russell Martin's comments after the game, Mark. It was okay for him to say there was an improvement, but using phrases like that setting the standard, that was brilliant. I was proud of the players, high-fiving them all as they come off, big cuddles. Not for me. I think at the very, very minimum all of us expect is for Rangers players to leave everyone on the pitch, especially in an Old Firm game. An Old Firm game, I want these guys to be crawling off if they need to. Which I think you did see from one or two of them, like, for example, Connor Barron, who hadn't played a lot of football. I think he completely ran himself into the ground and picked up that little knock, and he had to go off because he literally couldn't run anymore. So that is what I want to see out of a Rangers team anyway. In an Old Firm game, I think it's I just think it's a prerequisite of playing in that game. But you're right, it was a dreadful game. Celtic were completely there for the taking. I couldn't take any pleasure from us getting a draw against probably the worst Celtic team that I can remember seeing at Ibrox. I think in our group chat, I said it's the worst Celtic team that I've seen at Ibrox for 25 years. So I was specifically thinking about a game, I think we beat them 4-2, 1999. John Barnes was in charge. They were in complete disarray. I'm sure you all remember it. Then I thought back and I was like, but they had guys like Berkovic and Viduka and Petrov and stuff like that playing with them. So they're probably worse than that now. You're going back over 25 years ago anyway that I can think of. I know there's been some debate about maybe the Ronnie Delia teams and stuff like that, but that was a Celtic team on Sunday that we should have been beaten. Like, we should have, at the very least, should have been putting pressure on them. I had a bit of discussion with guys on the message board who said how it was good that we started to press them, and I'm saying we didn't press them though. Like, we really didn't press them. Celtic had 60% of the possession, and I know Alistair, that you really like your kind of stats and SofaScore. If you look at SofaScore and look at the average player positions, there was only one Celtic player that had an average player position that was fully in our half, and it was the new lad on the left-hand side, the number 10. So that tells me that they were sitting incredibly deep and they still had 60% possession. So that tells you that they were basically passing it about. amongst our defenders, and that's certainly how it felt at the game. Don't know about what the rest of the guys think, but it felt to me that Carter Vickers and Scales and stuff like that were on the ball a lot. I mean, you actually look at how poor guys like Scales are. We didn't press him at all, and we certainly didn't press him enough. So, yeah, it was an improvement, but no, I can't take too much pleasure in it, I have to say.
David, your analysis, I mean, I know it's asking a lot to try to change your analysis on the basis of one game, but if we can go a step back, you look at the tactics that were employed in Bruges, where, you know, 5 of the goals come from one side of the pitch, effectively. So that's a problem to be hit that many times. And then you come to the Celtic game, and because of the occasion and because we were going in there, not sure that Celtic fans were so certain that they would give us a hiding, but I certainly think there was a large body of opinion amongst the Rangers support were dreading it because we thought we could get scalped. Taking all that into consideration, and the fact that there has to come a time when we stop sacking managers so quickly, simply because I just don't think it's sustainable long term. What's your views now? You know, Martin, stay or go. Will it get better?
Well, I'll go to before the Celtic game first. I've never seen a Rangers team so completely shapeless and without what looked like any structure at all in the games prior to the Celtic game. And it is no surprise to me that we conceded literally, I don't know what it was, 20, 25 shots at our goal per game or some ridiculous stat. Even Arlo managed to score twice against us. I mean, the Bruges hiding was just a result that was coming when you saw the games before it. So, going into Sunday, my fear was that unless we put some kind of structure into the team, we would get another hiding. I'll be honest about it. So, if that was your expectation going into Sunday, then Sunday wasn't as bad as it could have been. Because I think for the first time there was a bit of pragmatism in the way the team was set up. We didn't faff about between the centre halves as much. We played along a wee bit more. The goalkeeper didn't try and play clever passes very often. We actually had 2 sitting midfielders. We had a bit more shape about us. But that didn't extend to actually creating anything. It didn't actually extend to threatening Celtic really in any way. So what success there was very, very limited. In my mind, to be honest with you, I don't really care how good or bad Celtic are right now. And I tend to agree with Lee that they're as bad as I've seen them for a long time. But I don't think it actually matters unless we start winning games of our own. If you think to last season, the reason we finished 17 points behind Celtic wasn't because of the Celtic games, it was because of the other ones. And how we've started this season is just a continuation of that. We can't beat the rest. And if you can't beat the rest, you're going to be, no, you can forget about talking about league titles. Doesn't matter what you do against Celtic. So the question in my head becomes, do I think I'm watching a Rangers team that is capable of putting a string of 7, 8, 9, 10 consecutive wins together in the league? Because that's how you win titles. I think when you look at the playing squad we've got, actually, I would be quite optimistic that we should be able to do that because we've brought in what looks like creative players, looks like quick wingers who've got goal scoring threat about them. We've now brought in a couple of strikers. You would think we should be able to score goals against the rest of the Premiership, but we've only scored 3 goals so far in 4 games. That must be down to the way the players have been deployed. So my long-winded way of saying should Martin stay or go, I genuinely think that regardless of if we beat Hearts 5-0 and next time we play them, he is one bad defeat away from another mutiny. It's just the way it's going to be for a while. Unless he genuinely does put this run of 7, 8, 9, 10 wins together, which will potentially buy him time. But he'll only do that if he doesn't have those ridiculous tactics that he had in the first 10 games that he was in charge.
Alistair, can I ask you, just as just as a wee aside as part of this, and I'll ask the other guys as well. If you look at the 4 loanees that we've got in, and if I can go back to when Walter was in his second term, myself and Mr. Edgar were summoned to Murray Park by Sir David, and Walter gave us a bit of a bruising, and he just said, "Listen, boys, this is how it is. In terms of the money, it's all changed. So I'm getting a team together, get them over that whitewash, and I'll worry about building a 4-year or a 5-year plan maybe next year. But this year I've got to work with what I've got to work with." In terms of the loanees that we've had in, and it looks as though it's going to be with us for a good number of years now, have we been getting, or have we got, do you think, looking at the records, people who will give us play of a standard that we wouldn't normally be able to afford?
You look at the two, we had a chat about it this week in terms of the 2 loanees we've had in the past couple of seasons in Vaclav Černý and Abdullah Sima. Both have gone, when we talked about the potential fee for Dimitri going 10 million, you look at Sima's going to Lens for 4 million. You've got Černý going to Besiktas for 6 million. Both proven, done well, but both of them came in and weren't of that younger vintage. They weren't the ones with potential. They kind of created a bit of an impression at clubs they've been at. They were surplus to requirements at the clubs they were at, but they were still in that position. So the loan market works if you get someone who is probably looking for that opportunity to kind of stake a claim and either re-establish themselves at their current club or look kind of wider than that. The ones that we have on loan just now, Max Aarons, as David said earlier, hasn't played a lot of games for Bournemouth. You don't see him, from what we've seen thus far, you wouldn't see Max Aarons at the end of his loan going back down to England and going straight into the Bournemouth team, for example. So for me, if this is the strategy, we're bringing in people on loan, then we have to be bringing in people who, when they go back, if at the end of the loan, like Černý, for example, are going back to their parent club, such that they've made a difference to Rangers, but they're also then going to take that step on with their own club, or alternatively, we get the option to buy them. Cortez is another one where we've taken Cortez on loan with an option to buy, this exclusive option to buy. One of the positives, I think, to take from our loan signings just now is there doesn't seem to be that. We've learned for that, because obviously Cortez at £4.5 million was a ridiculous bit of business. So I think we've kind of learned from that perspective. But if we're going to go to the loan market again, I think it needs to be people that have played games, that have got to that kind of position where they're going to come in and they're going to make a difference. The ones we have at the moment, Mikey Moore, to pick up Lee's point, very excited about him, but we've got such an embarrassment of riches, if you like, in the wide areas. You don't see Mikey Moore playing 10, 15 games in a row. You see him being in and out of the team, and I don't think we'll really see he'll get the opportunity to maximise his potential like that. So if we're bringing in loan players, I think there needs to be a bit more behind them rather than somebody that's kind of had a fragmented career and they're coming up here almost looking to resuscitate that.
Of course, Lee, it's not a new phenomenon. I remember listening to Arsenal against Wolves on Radio 5, and Arsenal were winning, I think, 3-0 at half-time. And the commentator said, "It's such a boring game that I've amused myself by adding up the shirt numbers on these players and dividing by 11, and the average number was 47. So effectively, Arsenal were playing either their fourth or fifth team that night. Obviously, for a grand old team like Wolves, they've improved since then. But is it here to stay in terms of the way the game in England has gone, and the fact that we are just up the motorway and we provide a platform for these guys? Is this something that's going to be here, and do you think we're using it well?
So earlier on we were talking about Kevin Thelwell and being balanced about his interview. There were some things he said that I really didn't like, but one of the things that I thought he did speak quite well on was the transfers, and he gave a particular attention and explanation about the reason for the loans. And I thought it was pretty good, like the way they explained it, why we were doing it, and that he much preferred to go down a loan with an option to buy, and he spoke well about, like, you know, not only can we see if the player works out, but also just if they can actually cope with playing with a club like Rangers. I mean, he didn't use those exact words, but that's what he was essentially saying, that these guys might be good at their parent clubs, but coming to Rangers, you know, brings its own challenges. So getting that loan with the option to buy is going to be his preferred method, and he is going to utilise it. I think I'm okay with that. Like, in theory, I think that's a good thing. To answer your original question, are we getting guys in who we probably wouldn't be able to afford otherwise? I think that's probably fair to say that we are. I don't think we would be able to buy Mikey Moore as it stands just now when you look at the ridiculous fees down there. Looking down the list of the loanees, I mean, it's the same again. On paper, you're looking at guys who are played in the English Premier League. So in theory, you would think we can't really afford them, but then we bring in Shermetti, who is also coming for the Premier League, and we have bought him. So that signing almost flies right in the face of everything that Thelwell said in terms of loanees. And I know we've covered that, so I won't go over old ground. But yeah, on paper, you've got to see guys like, you know, De Giga, guys like Mogoma. Would you be able to afford them? Probably not, because they're young players with potential that are playing in the Premier League, and that is worth a lot of money these days. I would say guys, though, like Cornelius, I mean, if you have a look at him, he is, I think, the most anyone's ever paid for him as his current parent club, which is Marseille. I'm sure it was 3 million quid, 4 million euros. I'm sure that's what it is when I read it earlier. If you look at him, it's been a lot of free transfers. He's actually been on loan quite a few times as well. So, I mean, in theory, could you say, could we sign a guy like that? Probably. I think we probably could have bought him if we really did want to buy him. But, you know, time will really tell here, Mark. I think at the moment it's all potential, and we're going to need to wait and see what we get out of these guys as to whether it's success or not. But what I will say is that, in theory, what Kevin Thelwell, I did agree with him, and I thought he spoke quite well in terms of the loan strategy. So as long as it works out like that, then yes, it will be a success, but remains to be seen, doesn't it?
David, can I give you your views on the loanees, and then we'll move to a separate subject, and then come back to two other guys. So your views on the loanees, and then the ins and outs this summer, your highlights that you like, and the people that we let go that you think, oh, we think we might get a tune out of him. So your views on that.
Oh, okay, we'll start with the loanees. I think this is a kind of one-off summer, you would like to think, in terms of the sheer number of players we've brought in. So that was 14 arrivals this summer. There's no way we could have afforded to buy 14 players in the one summer. I wouldn't imagine, unless the investment for the Americans was significantly more than they had stated it was going to be. So I think I can kind of get my head round, for this one-off major rebuild, that there needs to be slightly more loan players than you would normally expect to see. In my head, there's really just two types of loan. There's players you might bring in for one season who you can't possibly afford to buy or to for the wages for them, but they would such enhance your team for that one season, give you something you've not got, that they're worth it for a year. So over, like, with Tillman, we had Sima, we had guys like that who probably, when you see where they're playing now and the wages they're probably getting now, could we have really afforded them? But then you've got the other ones who I think Alistair explained as the option to buy ones, the ones that you bring in because you're not 100% sure whether they're going to fit in. So you'll have a look first. You'll see if they're as good as you think they are, but also whether they've got the mentality to play for the club, whether consistency, etc. And I prefer those ones, the ones that you can afford at the end of it if they're any good. This summer, I think, has been different though. My worry in the loans this summer specifically is that there's too many defenders in it. I think 3 of the back 4 on Sunday were loans without an option to buy them. So, and they all came for the Premiership, so they'll probably all disappear again. And Cornelius is another loan, so that's another defender. So in effect, I think we're going to have to bring in an entire new defence again next season. But as I said, I think this is a kind of one-off in the whole thing. But overall, the loan, everyone uses loans now. Loans are just an
Yeah,
accepted
sure.
part of football.
Mhm.
You know, so the second bit about who I think's been the outstanding buys and who I think maybe we were a bit hasty to get rid of. I think Gassama is going to be, or Gassam, I think it's pronounced. I think he's a steal.
Got to ask Tom Miller about the pronunciation.
What's this guy? Ian Crocker said in the St Mirren game that it was Gassam and he had asked the player and the A was silent. So Tom Miller was right all along, apparently. So all the things that have been
What
said
was
about
it?
him, we should take back. But I think he's a steal. He was only about 2 million odd. I think he wasn't 2.5 million. I think he came through the Paris Saint-Germain academy, didn't he? I think he's going to be a really good player for us. How long we can keep him for, if he's as good as I think he is maybe another story. In terms of, I think I mentioned Cameron. I think Majovski's a solid signing as well. As far as players who left, Jeffrey had potential, but I don't think we could have turned down the money we got for him.
No.
We-
I think I've said on here, and certainly in real life, I think I've said to you all, I mean, I like Jeffrey because I thought he was a bit of a nasty creature, that, somebody dug into him, they got a warning that, you'll not be doing that a second time, which has really been missing from our team for fairly long time, somebody that could really, put it up somebody else.
Yeah, but I think with Jeff, we keep talking about this player trading model and thinking about getting 15 and 20 million pounds.
Money was too good to turn down for.
But turning 500 grand into, or whatever it is, 800 grand into 6 million in 1 year, it's pretty damn good. I was disappointed Igaman left already because I thought he should have stayed another season. I don't think he's quite consistent and ready enough for a top league just yet. I think I'd have liked to have seen him for another season at Ibrox. But other than that, as I've alluded to already, don't forget we had a squad that was 17 points behind last season, 1-0, and we all wanted ripped up. None of the rest that left in the summer, I think, maybe with the exception of maybe somebody like Balogun, he got to the stage in his career, he was never going to be a regular at 36-year-old. I don't think any of the rest of them that left can complain that Rangers decided that they could dispense with them.
Alistair, your highlights and lowlights of the ins and outs.
I think, to take David's point, Gassam has been the one that, now that it's been clarified it is Gassam and he is silent. I think Gassam has been the stick out. You can see in him at £2 million, if he is a good season or two with us, there's scope there to potentially get a better sell on or whatever, and as per the current business model. Antman looked really good in his first game, but since then I'm not really 100% sure he's kind of fulfilled that potential that he showed in that game. The biggest disappointment for me, and this might surprise a few people, is Dessers. I appreciate it at the age he is, 30, 31, to get £3.5, £4 million, almost a return on an initial investment, is a good bit of business. But I honestly think not as our first choice striker, definitely not. There's too much of that inconsistency in his play for him to be first choice striker. But to have someone like Cyril Dessers in our squad, given how prolific he was, we can talk all along about the number of times he gets caught offside, the number of times that he missed chances or missed opportunities. All good strikers miss opportunities. His goal scoring record was excellent for us. I had a wee look earlier, I think back end of last season, he scored something like 10 in the last 14 league games. So there's a slight disappointment there that he's gone. Of the other players we've brought in, I've not been particularly impressed with Aarons. I know he's had some time at right back in his natural position. He's been asked to play at left back, but I don't see it. And the ironic thing about Max Aarons is there's been a clamour for 2 or 3 seasons now for Tav to be out the team. And once we get Tav out of the team, once we actually get a right back in who can defend and doesn't have the same defensive deficiencies that Tavernier's got, he might not be the same going forward. Here we've brought up a right back from the English Premiership, and everybody's now shouting for Tav to get back into the team. So I think that kind of sums up Max Aarons' start. There's probably quite a a large percentage of Rangers supporters as well that don't really want to see him near the team after what happened in Bruges as well. With his kind of cowardly red card, he goes and sort of gets himself sent off in that game. So yeah, Sam's probably the stick out, and I'm disappointed with Sol Dessers.
Lee, what's your highlights, the ins and outs, and can you also, I'll go around the other guys as well. I think we've all touched on it, but the striker dilemma is something that I think because at the end of the day, goals are always sells. So one, your highlights, your lowlights, and then move on to, have we found a solution for the striker dilemma?
Yeah, so just listening to the guys there, one of my highlights was going to be Miovski. Like I know that we've only seen him for the weekend. For us, so that's a definite highlight for me because he's a bit younger. He's only 26. I think we've picked him up for a fee that there is no way we'd have got him for that from Aberdeen directly. So that's good. It's sent him into
It's went down well with their fans anyway.
Honestly, I knew they would go mad about it, but I didn't. You forget how absolute lunacy of some people. It really has been quite funny. I think he's a good player. Like any time I've seen him playing, he's a player that he seems to be. He's got a bit of everything. So he does like to take the ball in. He can hold it in. He can bring other people in, but he also likes to play on the shoulder. Give him service. He will be prolific for us. And I agree with Alistair that seeing like Steppers and David and Eagleman going, yep. I mean, I didn't have the hate for Cyril as other people did, but you can't turn down that money. I agree with yourself and Davey that Yefty, I really liked Yefty as well. I thought, the same reasons as you, Mark, I thought he was strong. He's only 21. He really gets powerful. Yep, he had a lot to work on, particularly his final, something that really would continue to develop. But same again, you can't turn down that money. So can I really be disappointed to see him go? No, because that is the player trade model that we've all been asking for. The other one particular highlight, and I touched on it earlier, is Lyle Cameron. People automatically won't speak about him that much because he's a young Scottish guy and he's come from Dundee. But for me, I think he's performed very well, and every game I've seen him in, I think he's played well. And I think it's only been that small knock or injury. He would have played from the start.
David, the following on with the what we've called the strikers dilemma. Danilo, is this year make or break for him in terms of, in the past, he's been injured and so forth, and then his performances. Is this the make or break season for Danilo?
I'm not sure he's not already broken, if you know what I mean. What I'll say about Danilo is I thought some of the best football Rangers played last season was round about just after New Year when Iggeman played up front and Danilo played just off him, just behind him. I thought we played some lovely football at that time. And I'm actually wondering, when I look at the system we played on Sunday with the two defensive midfield players and a 10 type player, whether a Danilo can play as a 10 behind one of these other two centre forwards, and we can actually find a way of putting two of the three of them in the team. Because it was alluded to earlier on that we're not going to spend £8 to £10 million in a striker and not try and play him every week. But I think we've got to find a way of scoring more goals, because thus far we've been pretty hopeless at even creating something for our strikers, never mind seeing the striker scoring. I actually wonder whether there is a way of playing more than one of them in a game. The converse of that for me is that we've brought so many wingers, it looks almost certain that we're going to play 4-3-3.
One of the crazy ideas I've got, and it's based purely on highlights from the EFL and EPL, is Rothwell used to score a lot of really good goals, but we've been playing him just in front of the back four mostly. Is that my imagination, or is that correct? We've got him deep. We've got him deep lying anyway, but I'm just wondering, does that really suit him?
I must admit, when they signed him, I thought he was a box to box midfielder. And that's what I had in my head. I haven't seen him at Leeds and Southampton. It came as quite a surprise to me that he was getting used as this number 6, this guy just in front of the back four, not really crossing the halfway line all that much. The sort of conductor behind the midfield, if you like. This sounds terrible, but I think until he looks as if he's actually fit and able to last 90 minutes, that I wouldn't be playing him anyway. I don't know whether he's injured, but he doesn't look right to me. I thought he played really well against Panathinaikos, but since then he's looked as if he's really struggled and been struggling before half time in games, and he's not even been breaking forward very much. So I think his fitness is the thing that worries me most at the moment.
The final issue for this evening, and you've each got about 3 minutes to rant and rave. In previous seasons, I've kind of stood pretty staunchly, I think, in defence of some of the managers on the basis that we can't sack him now, it's too early. Maybe been a little bit cheeky to people and saying, well, why weren't you calling for him to be sacked in the summer? You know, rather than letting him get into a season if you're such an expert. What's happened with Russell Martin was very quickly, I wouldn't say I took a dislike to the guy, but when you're sitting there in the Friday press conference or the conference at the weekend, there's a lot of guru speak. There's a lot of management speak there. Group speak, you know, it's all kind of, you know, we're learning together. The group thinks, you know, the group are in great shape. And to me, that may be what you need to say to a lot of these younger guys from a different generation. But to me, it doesn't sound convincing. And there was one wee incident where people asked him about, you know, why you know wearing a suit. And he said, oh, I get too warm wearing a shirt and tie. And I looked at him and went, I think that's a merino wool t-shirt you're wearing, which ain't exactly the coldest. So I'm starting to think, is this guy for real? And then when you add in, I mean, some of the performances, you don't need to be Don Howe or a tactical genius to work out this ain't working. So maybe I've been missing something, but that's been my views. We've got 9 days to go before he appears in front of the press again. What do you want to hear from him in 9 days' time? And then when we play Hearts, what do you want to see in the pitch? Alistair?
I want him to stop using the word pain. I want him to stop talking about the precursor for change is pain and the pain will be so worth it. I want him to stop referencing the pain experience that other clubs he's managed, and going back to Southampton when the first 8 games were really, really poor. We lost 4 in the spin and then went 25 games unbeaten. With the greatest respect, Russell, this isn't MK Dons, it's no Swansea City, it's no Southampton. He needs to stop with that kind of rhetoric now, referencing back to what's happened to these other clubs. When you actually look at his managerial record, that 25 match unbeaten run at Southampton is the only thing that sticks out as being something positive, because that 25 match unbeaten run ultimately took them into the playoffs and got them into the Premiership. That's the one sort of thing in his CV that he's got. At other clubs, I think the only other thing that kind of sticks out is this 56 pass move that led to a goal when he was at either MK Dons or Swansea. He needs to ditch this kind of stuff, because he's coming across at the moment as being some sort of arrogant know-it-all, and he's also coming across as someone who, despite having played for the club for 6 months and seeming to tell us that he gets the ethos, he knows what the club's all about, he knows what's required, what he's saying in a press conference, whether it be before a game or after a game, doesn't align with that. The whole thing about being too sweaty to wear the collar and tie, I get the whole sort of side of things now. You know what? It doesn't matter if the manager wears the collar and tie, as long as he's winning football matches. It's to disrespect that tradition in the way he did in that press conference did not help his case. All he had to do was deflect it in another way. And when he is backed into a corner, when he is questioned, the way he responds to that question isn't defensive, it's arrogant. There's a kind of self-righteousness about him as well. He's not the man for the job. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get the club. I want my defenders to keep the ball as long as possible, and then give it away at the last minute because it creates more space for the next phase of play. That's not going to wash in Scotland. It's not going to work because the amount of pressure that our defenders are put under in that circumstance. And he also doesn't have the personnel to play that style of football. If he wants to implement this strategy that he's got, the masterclass, we've all watched the YouTube video where he's moving his wee counters about the board, talking about the Swansea City, Cardiff City game and whatever. If he wants to implement that strategy, then with the greatest respect to Russell Martin, he can go somewhere else and implement that strategy because it's not going to work at Rangers.
I think, there's sometimes you can learn some things from the past. You can't live in the past. But if you're a 39-year-old man, I don't see what the point is and you try to dress like a 20-year-old. I mean, we all think we're players, right? Men think they're players, right? But when you're 39, you ain't the same as you were when you're 20. And I remember Billy Simpson telling me when he signed for Rangers, the first thing he did after he signed was Peterkin, who was Bill Struth's chauffeur, took him to a tailor's and got him suits and blazers and whatever. And he was told that's how you dress as a Rangers player. And he said you'd be in the dressing room and Struth would appear from nowhere behind you and tug you at the back of your hair and going, "Is sixpence too much for a haircut?" And he said it was so relentless that you started to take care of how you presented yourself and you got that right and you got your footwear right and all these things, all this attention to detail, whether it was dressing or whether you were on the pitch training or playing, it had an effect. So bring back the suit. That's my advice. Lee, what's your views? What do you want out of Russell Martin in terms of what he's saying and in terms of what he's doing?
What do I want him to say other than I resign effective immediately? You mean? I would like him to stop waffling and to stop trying to pull the wool over our supporters' eyes that are completely fed up with it. Like one example, and it's just popped into my head, is the whole debacle about Nico Raskin, and I'm one of the ones that certainly doesn't feel that Nico Raskin's blameless in all of this. I feel like there's too many coaches have kind of questioned his attitude now for them all to be wrong. But that being said, Russell Martin was asked about him, and he made it quite clear the way that he said it. He said, "No, Nico was in at training." And it's since we found out, he wasn't at training, but he wasn't training with the first team. So don't do that. Like, just don't do.
That was something that was always going to get caught out on.
Yeah, like don't do that.
Even if you get away with it.
Aye,
the press conference.
Yeah, don't do that. I mean, that's not right. I mean, he's tried to be very clever there. He likes to talk a lot about his philosophy, and as you say, it's about the group and all. This pain is going to be so worth it, and it's all just nonsensical sound bites. But when he gets asked a direct question, and I'm like a few of us, I'm sometimes loath to give our enemies, or they're not exactly our friends in the mainstream media, but they asked him a few direct questions over the last few games. He just doesn't give them an answer. Like, I thought the reporters at TNT were very, very good following that calamitous defeat at Bruges. You don't get a straight answer. Tom English at the BBC asked him a very direct question more than once, and he just wanted to skip round it. "Oh, you'll need to ask someone else. You need to go and ask the players." No, we're asking you. We're asking you a direct question. So I'd like him to take some accountability. I do think as well that anything that's went wrong, I haven't actually heard him take any accountability yet. Like, it was something that I always felt Steven Gerrard was very good at. Like, you could go in after a game with Gerrard and we hadn't played well, and you could be all ready to ask him a question, and then it just get blown out of the water because he would start speaking and he would talk about how poor it was and it was on him. He'd set the team up like that. It wasn't right. That wasn't what I'd asked to do, but I shouldn't have played him from the start and things like that. So I'd like Russell Martin to take some accountability. Just very finally, what do I want to see in the park? He just needs to win. And I don't think even a victory straight away is going to turn things around for him. As David said, we need to go on that 7, 8, 9 game run before, certainly myself, I'll change my opinion of him and the wider support. I didn't want him in the first place. I don't think it's worked out. I didn't think it could be anywhere near as bad as this, but it is. So for me, it's time to cut our losses and move on. So,
Sorry, Mark.
Sorry, I'll come back to you in a minute, Al.
No worries.
I'm just going to say to David before we started answering was, I've been going to the press conferences, I think, for 3 or 4 years. And that was the first Friday one, or indeed midweek one that I can remember Tom English turning up at. And I think it's because he smelt blood in the water. He would never have dared to talk like that to Gerrard, for instance. I don't think certainly wouldn't ask Gio either. But they smell blood in the water because they realise that the fans are in a state of flux over this guy as well, So he's really got one way to keep his job, and that is to relentlessly win until the next Celtic game. I mean, we haven't even got around to talking about the Europa League. And he might have won a watch there because apart from Roma and Porto, we don't really have a fantastic set of fixtures in terms of, playing clubs with great history in Europe. So, Alistair, can you make your point, and then I'll finish up with David.
It was just to basically pick up and when he's answering questions and he's asked the direct questions that Lee was talking about. He was asked a direct question on Sunday about the chanting for Nico Raskin, and he turned round and told the press that he didn't hear it. It was audible. It was about 26 minutes into the game. It was so obvious that the fans were chanting for Nico Raskin. See, at that point, see if he says, yes, I understand the fans' frustration, etc., and he admits to it, he further disaffected himself or disengaged himself with the supporters by turning around and saying, nah, I never heard it. 26 minutes into an Old Firm game, everybody in the stadium hears it, everybody on TV can hear it. So that kind of stuff has to stop as well. He has to put his hands up and go, yeah, I did hear it, rather than just telling a blatant lie like he did. David,
unusually, you get the last word.
Very unusually. My wife certainly doesn't like that to happen. I would say that I'm not going to disagree with anything the guys have said. One of my big frustrations in his interviews after games has been this insistence that the players weren't brave enough to follow his instructions, which drives me daft. He needs to stop describing games in a way that we can see with our own eyes was absolutely not what we've just watched. And I think what he needs to do, and I hate using this as a comparison, but it's the best one I can think of. I remember Celtic appointing an Australian manager a few years back who nobody had heard of, nobody really wanted at Parkhead. We were all laughing because he started off with 3 defeats in the first 5 league games. He was going to be a disaster. We were going to be a joke. But what he did was he, A, got recruitment right, and B, made his team play in a style of play that absolutely suits the Scottish game. Quick, get the ball forward, get behind defences, hit bylines, get players into the penalty box, score goals. He did that. And you know what? The thing that will save Russell Martin is a style of play that suits what our culture. He keeps talking about culture. He wants to change the culture of the club. The only culture of the club that matters is winning. The culture of the club's not right because we've been losing. So yes, change it. But change it in the important way, not in terms of what the philosophy and how we play football is, but what actually wins football games. And what wins football games is, as I say, dominating teams, getting the ball into areas that hurt other teams and scoring goals. If he does that, you never know, he might surprise us. But I'm with the other two guys at the moment in that I fear he will not change. I fear he'll still talk about his philosophy. And I fear that sooner rather than later, his philosophy will come unstuck once too often and the fans will just drive him out of the club.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for your thoughts. And until the next time, thank you and have a good evening.